to. Now, yeah, well, they've got one here. It's been what, 3 or 4 years. But it's good to have Jeff back. But it's good to have everybody. Of course, this is the Athens Forage Group. We're a member of the Alabama Forage Council. We have, I think, 9 groups throughout the state now. We're fortunate to have our president of our association here with us. This is Travis Flemings. This is his shop that we meet at, so we're fortunate there. First thing I'd like to talk about, and I know some of you will get tired of it, is safety. We've got safety glasses here. If you're going to be up here, anywhere in this area around here, please wear your safety glasses. It doesn't take but just a little bit for a little shrapnel to come off of a hammer or come off of a punch or something, and we don't want anybody to get an eye put out or anything like that. I talk about safety here. I also stress it that you use safety in your own shop. You watch some YouTube videos, some of it's scary. You know, I saw one other night, a little boy, probably 8 or 9 year old, was over there hammering and forging, no safety glasses or anything on. So he's young, he gets eye put out, he's gonna have an eye gone for life. So be careful with safety. You can't be too safe. I've had accidents and I was trying to be safe. As most of you,
along those lines, I still remember the day that I came in and told you all about a friend in California that caught herself on fire while grinding. What happened? But somebody caught on fire.
mm-hmm. Yep, that can happen too. Can it, Calvin?
Calvin goes,
It's kind of obvious that we talked about we'd be moving to a new building. We haven't done that yet. Kind of waiting on. Some of you figured it out. Paul figured it out pretty quick this morning.
When I ran into the corner.
Yeah, some are a little slower maybe. But that will be coming in the future. The weather's just kind of prohibited the move and everything. But we're looking forward and excited about getting up to the other building. We've got some foraging stations set up. The area would kind of be for our group to meet at. Travis and Al will be teaching some classes up there, plus Travis will have his own foraging area with his power hammers and everything set up. That being said, when we do get that move made, parking we'll have to be careful with the parking because the Lion's Den gym is there. We cannot park in front of it. So we'll have to park to the side, and I think at some point we'll be able to park in the back of the building and everything, but if not, we can park over here and walk across. But we want to be sure we leave the parking lot open in front of the Lion's Den gym. Once we get moved there, we do, like where you bring your own tools and steel, we'll be doing some open forges and things like that where you can go in and forge and hammer and everything. We will have a few sets of tongs up there. Maybe in the future some more things set up. But if you got tools, bring your own tools, your own steel, and just have at it. I mentioned some classes for the new people or the older people. There are some classes that go on that Al and Travis teach through Athens State College. This is Al and Travis. If you got any questions, they can tell you about those. And also at the Burritt Museum, Al teaches over there some, and I think there's some other instructors that's teaching over there too. So that will be some good classes going on there. If you're interested, you can check with Burritt. And again, Al can give you a little more information about that. Actually, I'm going to turn it over to our Secretary Treasurer here for just a minute.
Anybody wants these are catalogs, they're free. If you're familiar with Astragal Press, they were bought out by another company, and this is the new catalog they've got a bunch of craft, collectible books and stuff, so feel free to take them, because at the end of the meeting, they're going to be recycled. So don't be afraid to take them. I've got printed out the whole Alabama Forage Council membership roster is here. If you don't see your name under the Athens, but you think you're signed up, look under the back. It's the at-large, and there's a lot of at-large people. So you might be listed at-large if Judd didn't put you against the Athens Forge. And then I'm changing up the way we're doing name tags and to join the email list. If you're not getting the email for this meeting and you want it, then send me a request to this email. And if you don't have a name tag, and I have to apologize for last meeting, I lost the list, so if you signed up last meeting, you didn't get a name tag still. So send me this information to that email address. It's athensforgegroup@gmail.com. If you send it, then I don't have a problem reading handwriting also. So there's at least two emails that I got last time that I couldn't read good enough to make them work. So if you didn't get the message, send me this email and I'll get you signed up for either a name tag or I can put you on the distro list. If you've pre-ordered shirts, come see me. They're $15 a piece. And we've got Iron in the Hat going on. And I believe that's everything I need to
Okay.
set up.
Good deal. We will be live streaming our demo today.
We're already live.
We're already live streaming.
I'm on time today.
You're good, dude. You're doing good, Dave. Go to YouTube, look that up. You can rewatch the demo today. We've got other demos on there. We appreciate Dave and the efforts that he's put forth. But it's good to have someone here to do that for us.
And so if you search on YouTube, just look up Athens Forge Guild. All the live streams that we've done have been on there. Even if you're at this one, if you have the time, go home on your computer, bring it up, let it play in the background, get some of the view counts up. Because the more people view it, the more people like, comment, subscribe, the whole 9 yards. The kids say nowadays that brings up the visibility of it, and other people will see it in their news feeds. So the more popular we make it, the more popular other people will see it. We can bring in new members. And we've had people from as far away as like Quebec and Spain watching us during the live streams. So we're not just here in Alabama. We're worldwide now.
Al, don't mess up.
Yeah.
I totally watch this cold fire. Also, I did mention we're members of the Alabama Forge Council for our new people. We love to have people visit with us. We have some applications. We ask that the third time you visit, that you join the Alabama Forge Council. That's $25 a year. With that, you get 6 issues of the autonomous bits. Got some good information in it, some good articles and everything. And if you don't know when your membership is due, look on the bits. On the back of the bits, there'll be a date, and that's when you're due to pay your membership up. If you're not a paid member, you cannot participate with the group here when we've got a project going. You can't get in the fire, do any forging or anything. That's just some regulations that the Alabama Forge Council has, not per se the Athens group here. So that's a requirement. We do have our autonomous bits editor here. Steve, we're decided that Steve's doing such a good job with it. It'll be easy to keep up with your date now because you'll be getting your bits on a regular basis like you should. So look on the back of it if you got a question. We've also got a list over here on the table. If you just say, okay, am I paid up? There's a list here showing everybody that's paid up. If your name's not on there, you need to get your dues in. And we've got some applications. I think Ashton's got some applications over here. Anything else I'm missing? I don't know. Everybody's quiet. You're afraid I'm gonna talk longer, so I'll hush, huh?
Blade Symposium.
Oh, yeah, we got Blade Symposium, thank you, Bob, coming up in April. Kevin Cashin
and Rick
Dunkersley.
Dunkersley.
Yeah, gonna be a good time down there. That information's on our website, so look at that.
One thing about Kevin's demonstrating swords. I don't believe
Yeah.
I've ever seen somebody
Swords.
actually demonstrate making a
Sword,
sword
yeah.
at a conference like this. So,
Yeah, I
And
think
I-
that'll
and
probably be
I'm-
a first.
and I'm used to avidly reading everything Kevin writes online anyway. So,
So try to make it, coming up in May, there'll be a conference in Murfreesboro. It's the Appalachian group up there. they do an excellent conference. It's 2 hours away, so it's close. So remember that. All this information is on the websites, but they do have a very good conference up there. And then in September, we have our blacksmith conference at Tanny Hill. Again, keep those in mind, check those out. They're worth going to. If there's nothing else, we have our demonstrator with us today. He's not new to any of us, except maybe the ones that haven't been here before, Mr. Al Stevens. I always depend on Al to start the year off. He's done this for the last several years. Yeah, long time. But he does an excellent tong demonstration, and everybody's wanting to make tongs, wants to know how to make tongs. So if you get tired of seeing him make tongs in January, hopefully if he's still around and hadn't moved on us again, he'll do it again next January. But he can do things besides make tongs. So Al was a full-time blacksmith before he retired. He still plays around with some, does, like I said, teaches some classes and all, but we're glad to have Al in our group. I can always depend on him when I have an emergency and need a demonstrator. He can fill in and do about anything. But he is going to demonstrate tongs for us today, so I'm going to turn it over to Al.
Thank you, Ronnie. And thank all of you who have been here on previous Januaries, but still come out today. I appreciate it. Like I say, we're gonna do tongs again today. Actually, I'm gonna do a pair of tongs. I'm gonna do a pair of scrolling pliers. And what you're gonna see is, although you wind up with two different tools, the process that we go through will be the same for both of them. Tong making is something that I was shown very early in my blacksmithing journey, I'll call it. Many of you know when I started, I was a volunteer at an 1830s circa village, historic village, and the shop that we had there, we had a coal forge, we had a bellows, we had a leg vise, an anvil, and we did everything by hand. That's where I learned to make tongs. And I have store-bought tongs. I have tongs that I make. Over the years, the ones that I consistently use the most are the tongs that I've made for myself. And the reason for that is those are the tongs that feel best to me to use. Another reason to learn to make tongs, if you buy a pair of tongs, and I'm not trying to tell anybody not to buy factory-made tongs. But if you start looking around and pricing tongs, you'll see them anywhere from about $40 up for a pair of store-bought tongs. Very seldom I use more than $1 worth of material when I make a pair of tongs. So there's that. Again, there's the aspect of them that, the tongs I use feel better to me than store-bought tongs. Used to be all the old tongs that many of us found at garage sales or auctions or junk places, just always were very big. Felt real heavy for me to use. So that kind of directed me to make lighter tongs too. Because in when I was doing this full time, I was always working with multiple pieces in a gas forge, and the lighter the tong, the less effort I had to expend holding my piece, and I had more effort to do the work. If you look on YouTube, you're going to see a lot of different people making tongs. Some of them are real good. Some of them are real dangerous. What I'm going to show you today is the second way that I was shown to make a pair of tongs. The first couple of pair that I made are buried deep and way back in the drawer of a toolbox because they were ugly and they didn't work very good. So, but I've gotten a little bit better over the years, you know, with making more of them. One of the things that you'll learn in making your own tongs is hammer control. And what's our new slogan on the back of the shirts? Hammer skills pay the bills. And that's true. When you get into it as a profession, people don't like work that looks like it's been run over by a truck. They're looking for well-made things. There's a lot of hammer work in a pair of tongs. A lot of repetitive motion. And all that helps you. Alright, so the first pair of tongs we're going to make is just a pair of flat-jawed tongs. This is a pair that I made a long time ago. Still use them almost all the time. We're going to start out, there's 3 main pieces of any pair of tongs. You've got your jaw, you've got your boss, and you've got your rein. Travis and I taught a tong making class a time or two, and we made these what we call our 1, 2, 3 blocks. Everything you need to know about a pair of tongs is right here. Number 1 step, we're going to start on this side of the anvil. I'm going to start forging the drawing and forging the jaw out. Step number 2, I'm going to turn it about 45 degrees, bring it to the off side of the anvil. I'll use my half face blow again, and I'm going to start separating that boss. Step number 3, I'm going to bring it to the offside edge of the anvil. I'm going to use my half face blow, and I'm going to set that edge. And the rest of it's just drawing and punching. All these little blocks we've made, you know, I said 1, 2, 3. When you've got it laid out here, you see those numbers, 1, 2, 3. And that's the easiest way that I've ever found to do it. Now, a half face blow. A half face blow is when you hammer, half of your hammer will be over the anvil and half of it will be hanging off the anvil. And what that does is then imagine your anvil right here. You're hitting here, and that's driving that area down. You can't put it in the anvil, it's got to go someplace. And that's where we're going to start. If you're starting and you make both pieces the same. I thought I had a piece of soapstone in my pocket.
Here you go.
Thank you, Ronnie. Don't be afraid to draw on your anvil. If you're going to because making both pieces the same is key to making tongs. If you don't make both pieces the same, you'll never get them together. Okay, so I've got a mark on my anvil here about 1 inch in, 1.25 inches. Pull my piece out of the fire. I'm going to lay it on the edge of the anvil. I'm going to start my jaw. I'll take another heat on this to refine it. But here you can see, I've laid it on the edge of the anvil. I'm hammering like this, and that's what sets that jaw. Now, a potential weak spot that you want to watch is right here. 2 things you want to remember. Don't get your jaw too thin back here, because that's going to create a weak spot in it. And if you leave just a little bit of radius in there, it's going to be stronger. You know, that's where all your pressure is going to be. So that little bit of radius really helps a lot. So you don't have to have an anvil with just, razor sharp edges to do this. All right, second verse, same as the first. I'm on my mark. So I've got two pieces now with my jaw started. I'm going to refine them just a little bit.
When you roll, when you turn those, does it matter which direction you turn?
No, as long Ronnie asked if when you turn your tongs, when you roll them to make the different steps, does it make a difference? No, just as long as you do both the same. And if you have a question, please do not hesitate to ask, because if you're thinking it, chances are very good that the person next to you is thinking the same question.
Here's a side note for questions. Anybody that can't see the live chat on YouTube, just refresh the page. Feel free to ask questions. Re-enabled the chat.
And if you're watching on YouTube, Dave can answer all your questions.
Yeah.
Okay, here's our first two. Here's our first two pieces. Okay, the only measurement that I've done was that mark on the anvil. So here's our jaws. Okay. All right, that's step one.
Thank you.
What size stock you're using?
I started these with 5/8 round stock. I used to use 1/2 inch all the time. 5/8 has got just a little bit more mass, but that's going to change with whatever tong you're making. When I was in business, I had a lot of 5/8 round around, and that's what I got to use it all the time. Now, a little safety note here. You see I'm wearing a glove on my left hand. And again, that was kind of a habit I got into when I was working full time, because I was working up against the gas forge and I was helped me a little bit. If you wear gloves, that's fine. But if you get burned, if you feel your hand getting hot enough to burn you, the first thing you want to do is get rid of that glove and then go down into the water. And the reason why, if you stick glove at all down into the water, all that heat's going to produce steam, and you're going to be burned worse than you were the first time. Okay. Second step. Step number 2 on our block. Step number 1 was here on this side of the anvil, half face below. Step number 2, I'm going to go to the off edge of the anvil. I'm going to extend my jaw over the edge, okay, at about a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to make a half face blow. Now, I always rotate counterclockwise.
So why?
Just because that's the way I do it. That's the way I was shown to do it. It works for me. It doesn't make any difference whether you rotate counterclockwise or clockwise. Just do both pieces the same. That's the key.
Hey,
Sir?
starting at next step, right back behind where the
Right back here at the end of the jaw is where your next step starts.
Is there such a thing as a left-hand set or a right-hand set?
Steve, I'm gonna let our newsletter editor.
That's a good question.
I got real courageous and wrote about 2 pages on that once, and nobody wrote me nasty grams, so my answer is yes, but most people find it doesn't make that much difference.
I've heard yes. I've heard yes, but it depends on how they lay it in your hand, how they fall down.
Yeah, that's been my experience.
But we're gonna talk about that later.
Okay.
Alright, second verse. Off the outside edge of the anvil, right at the back of my jaws, half face blow. Now, another beginner tip, if you will. When you're drawing things out, hammer straight up and down. When you're doing one of these motions, you're not doing anything. Hammer straight up and down. And I guess the best illustration that I can think of for that is pointing to Travis's big hammers over here. The rams are going straight up and down. That's the way you need to hammer. Your material, on anything you do, your material can't move up into your hammer face. Your anvil's going to keep it from driving it down. The mass generally behind it is going to keep it from moving this way. It's going to follow, just like water and air and electricity and hydraulic oil, it's going to follow the path of least resistance. And that's going to move it out. All right, now there is one little thing with this second step. Because this boss area will eventually be mated to the other boss area, this is essentially going to be a bearing surface. It's going to have to move freely, okay? So keep that as smooth as you can. The outside's not real important, but keep that inside smooth. And we're going to take that down, to approximately half the thickness of the material. We're using 5/8, so call that 5/16 or 1/4 inch. I don't think I've ever had a pair of tongs fail at that boss area. Now I've had them fail at the back of that jaw, so remember to keep that a little bit heavier. Now, I don't know how many of you work in coal. If you work in coal, you always want to keep a nice deep bed of coals for your air to blow up through. If you don't have that bed of coals and you stick your piece down into your fire pot like this, and then you stand there and say, well, my piece is never getting hot. And the reason it's not because you've got it stuck down in the cold air that you're blowing up into your fire. Whereas if you've got a nice heavy bed of coals here, and you lay your piece in like this, then all that heat the air is heated, comes up through the coal, and your piece is going to get hotter fast. All right, so I've got and if I look a little clumsy in this coal fire, it's because about the only time I ever use coal is here or at a historic site or something. I've always worked in gas. All right, so I've got my jaws. I've got my boss started.
Put them
A little lower. Okay, there's jaws. There's boss. Okay, I got one a little, use a real technical term here, it's called cattywampus. You know, kind of twisted. Now, the twist was put in there by my hammer. And that's another good thing to remember is if your piece starts to do something weird that you're not wanting it to do, that's when you have to stop and fix it. It will I don't know that I have ever had a piece just accidentally fix itself. Okay? And the excuse was, and if you get to the point where it just goes completely haywire, it never did that by itself. It did that because that's the way you were handled. All right, so we've had step 1, step 2, now step 3. I'm going to leave a 3/4 or an inch of that boss hanging over the anvil, and I'm going to start my rain. Again, with that half face blow. All right, 1, 2, 3. And just like our jaws, just like when we did our jaws, a nice little radius there will make that a stronger point rather than dead square. One, 2, 3. I got that boss a little short, but we'll make that work. Now I'm going to refine those a little bit, and then we'll go on to punching a hole. I've already drawn the reins out in a power hammer. Just, standing watching somebody draw a rein out that long is just boring, and that also saves my shoulder. So I've drawn those reins out in the power hammer. But we'll take another heat, we'll refine everything a little bit. Now, here's what you could do. If you've gone through these 3 steps and you don't want to draw your reins out, cut it off right there and weld whatever rein you want to on it. And then you're done. Because all this drawing, and boy, I got that one too warm, didn't I? Okay, I'm paying a little bit more attention to my boss here to make sure it's nice and flat. Okay, just like my 1, 2, 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3. Both pieces are made exactly the same. Let me do just a little bit more work there. Now, I've got these reins drawn out square because that was the easiest way to do it in a power hammer. Again, the way you make reins is what feels good to you. Some people like their reins round. Some people like them oval, you know, and you'll see all different kinds of reins on store-bought tongs. Some people like them square. A lot of mine I've kind of taken to an octagon. And again, that's one of those personal preference things. There is a lot of advantages, though, if you're just getting started in this, to drawing out your reins. It helps you to see how the metal's moving, okay? You will eventually learn hammer control. There's all kinds of trouble that you can get into. You know, you can develop this wonderful twist in the middle of them where things start to change size. You have to know how to correct. When I was first getting started, a friend of mine later became a real good friend that I met in a meeting just like this, had a production line of kitchen utensils. And he hired me to, in 5/16 round material, I would take about 4 inches of that material and I would draw it out to about a 5.5 inch long taper. And I did them all by hand. And I just hammered until I couldn't pick my arms up sometimes. But it taught me hammer control. You know, it taught me that I could hammer out a piece and you couldn't see hammer marks in it because it was nice and smooth. Taught me how to blend things in together. Taught me how to keep from developing those twists. So there is a lot of very good lessons to learn by drawing something out and just doing things repeatedly.
Hey Al, Anthony Goodwin says hey.
Hey Anthony! Okay, now I'm gonna come back here. Since this set will be in the iron in the hat, either today or the next time we have one, I will go ahead and at least make an octagon on those reins. And if you don't like it, you can take them apart and do whatever you want to with it. Dustin around.
He's fixing something for me.
Dustin, yeah. Can you come up here and work on this fire a little bit while I do some more talking? Dustin has helped me with several classes real good young smith. All right. Now, the next thing I'm going to do here is we're going to punch our hole for where our rivet goes. And where you want that hole is approximately the center of your boston. You don't have to lay it out. You don't have to center punch it. Just get it, relatively close to that center punch. Punching holes is another skill. Okay, something to learn. When a blacksmith punches a hole, most of our material is being spread out into the piece. The way I'm going to go about that, I'll start my punch from this side. I'll hit it a time or two, make sure it's where I want it to be. I'll drive my punch on down until I feel it bottom out against the end. And at that point, I will push the material out to the sides and got to the point where I cannot compress it any farther. I'm going to turn my piece over, and when I do, I'm going to see a dark circle. That's the bottom of that hole that I punched in from the other side. You put your punch right on that dark circle and clear it out. At that point, the hole in your piece is the female portion of a die. Punch is the male part. You just clear it out. And you've wasted very little material. You've pushed the other material, out into your boss. And you can. And one advantage one advantage of punching holes like this is you don't necessarily have to have a round hole. And as you can see, you don't have to do it at a blinding heat all the time. Okay? The fellow that I worked with initially in that historic village, he used to punch things at just, almost a welding heat. And every time I tried to do it, I just messed it up. It was the kindest way to put it. And then I took a class from another fella, and he described putting holes in like this. He wanted me to slow down, not work everything at such a blinding heat. Well, now I've done it. And his explanation was this, that if you allow things, hold on just a second, when I punch through that first side, oh, here it is. Okay, when you punch down through this first side, okay, turn it over, you see your dark spot. That piece has cooled enough so that will shear good. When it's just white hot, it just wants to smear around. And that was the way he explained it, and I started punching holes that way. And you can see this was down really to almost a black heat before I finished it. but it still cleared the hole, and there was still enough heat there that I could, make the hole fit my rivet. Push. What? No. Okay, so I missed my center a little bit. Loud blast. Here, we'll get that a little bit more. Yeah, Jeff, if you would. I normally make my punches, my chisels, and everything out of H13 if you're asking. The other way. Okay, I felt it bottom out. Just going to turn it over. Jeff can see that shiny spot. Put my punch. On it. Thank you, Jeff. Close enough. Okay, now let's talk rivets. I have heard people say, "Well, I can't make tongs because I don't have any. I can't make my own tongs because I don't have a rivet." Okay. What I'm using as rivets today is just a piece of 1/4 inch round because I had a piece laying around. If you need a little piece to make your rivets, then you only need one. Take the end of your tong, forge you a rivet, forge you down to your 1/4 inch, and your tong's only going to be a little bit shorter. You're going to cut the other one off to match anyway. So if you've got the material to make a set of tongs, you've got the material to make your rivets too. Or you can buy store-bought rivets. Okay. Now, so we've gone step 1, step 2, step 3. I punched my holes. Because I've done everything the same, those two pieces will now fit together and vaguely resemble a pair of tongs at this point. Now, this is the step you'll find out that if you turned one side clockwise and the other side counterclockwise. Because if you did that, you won't be able to put them together. Now, the advantage to that is now you can do 2 more pieces to match these, and you'll have 2 pair of tongs. Unless you repeat. No, even if you repeat, you'll have 2 pair of tongs. All right. Now, the only other thing that I'm going to do before I rivet these together, just going to do primarily that jaw. What I'm going to do is, and I do this in almost all of my flat jawed tongs, is I put 2 grooves in. I put a groove lengthways in the jaw, and I put a groove at 90 degrees. Now, that's a real fancy tool that you've got to have to make that groove. There's a 1/2 piece of material that I've ground a 90-degree angle on you, or I've ground 45-degree angles on you. Mild steel. There is no telling how many pair of tongs I've made in classes and demos with this same piece. All right, Dustin, whenever you're ready. Jeff, can you hold that for me again if you do not mind? All right, just flat. So I'm going to take my piece right about the center. I'm going to start that V. I'll go ahead and take it pretty well to the back. Now I've got it started. Hammer it in a little better. And I'm going to come at about 90 degrees to it. May have to get on. Now let's get that warm. No, you don't need that. You do that later. No. Now, I'm only grooving one of these jaws. And the reason I'm only grooving one of them is that when I rivet them together and I get the jaws set, then I'm going to take a little piece of 1/4 inch square and I'm going to lay in that groove and I'm going to hammer the other one down on it and my grooves are going to line up and I won't have to worry about any alignment issues. Dustin's probably saying, boy, I'm glad he's got Jeff to do that. Alright. Now that jaw has got kind of thin on me, but I think we'll be alright with it. So now I've got a groove going lengthwise, I've got a groove going crosswise. That will allow me to grab a small piece of material from the end and hold it securely, whether it be round or square. And again, these are flat, so I can do it flat. And I can also grab it from the side in case I want to use my tongs to twist a thing.
Does it give it any better grip for flat metal?
For flat metal, it may, but I don't know that I've ever been able to tell the difference. Alright, now, we're going to rivet these together.
In other words, you only put the groove on one side.
Yes, I've only got the groove on one side at this point. What I am going to do is, since we're going to put these in iron in the hat, I do want to go ahead and I'm going to just take my hammer and I'm going to break these corners all the way down. It'll just take a couple of heats. Questions? As long as heat as we can. Okay. Riveting.
Now,
Sir.
talk about material, mild steel versus silver steel.
Okay. All right. A lot of your manufactured tongs will be made out of at least a higher carbon material. I don't know if it's quite tool steel, a good tool grade or not. I've always made my tongs out of mild steel. 2 reasons. One, that's what almost all of my work was mild steel. So I had it laying around all the time. It was less, mild steel is less expensive than carbon steel. It's a little bit more forgiving. I said I worked with multiple pieces. Okay, so I was always working on something hot. Occasionally, my tongs would get warm enough, even through my gloves, to be uncomfortably warm. And I dip my tongs. I just cool them off in water. A lot of your manufactured tongs will tell you not to do that. And if you've got a pair and it tells you not to do it, don't do it. I use mild steel. Alright, so I'm just going to take this and I'm going to break my edge here. say, you know, again, this is kind of a personal thing. You may want your tong range to be round. And if you do, you would go through the same steps I'm going through. Something we didn't talk about today is drawing things out. You draw something out, you draw it square, then you octagon it, just like I'm doing it here, and then you go to round. And you can make things as round, as smooth as you want to be. And again, if you see your piece, you know, twisting on you or bending on you, the time to fix it is then, not keep hammering and with the hope that it will eventually straighten itself out. Now, what I'm going to do, I think, is I'll just lay it down. As you can see, I started out with the same material. I went through the same steps. Both of these pieces are, well, within about 3/8 of an inch long. I did get a jaw a little thin. I wish I hadn't done that, but they'll still be a serviceable pair of tongs. So you start with the same mass, you do the same operations, you're going to wind up at the same time. That's just the way it works. All right, we're going to let these cool. Now, let's go ahead. Cool them off. And we'll rivet. Talk about riveting here.
Before you do that, go back to that tool steel. If you do use tool steel, get it hot, quench it.
If you use tool steel, you quench it when it's too hot. It can become brittle. It can break.
Correct. That goes back to the other advantage of mild steel.
Mild steel, yeah. But now there again. And now here's something else you got to remember. When I'm talking about quenching a set of tongs because they've gotten too hot to hold, your flesh burns at 135 degrees. I don't know that quenching anything at 135 degrees is going to hurt the molecular structure. So that's something to keep in mind too. All right, riveting. Some people rivet hot. I've kind of, in my lazy old edge, got to riveting cold. As you can see, our rivet goes in the hole. My surface lines up, my bearing surface is relatively flat and winds up good. I've cut my rivets. I've cut these little pieces of cold roll short enough that I can get through my mass and I can still have enough to rivet over. And I just rivet cold. Again, I've done them both ways. I don't know that one is any better than the other. I do a little bit on one side. You say, how long do you cut your rivets? I think the official thing is you should have your rivet diameter plus a half to make your head. So if I was using a 1/2 inch rivet or a 1/4 inch rivet, I would want about 5/16 hanging over the edge. Now I've got these two pieces together, and lo and behold, I've locked them up and they won't move. I know that's not a very good pair of tongs, but we're gonna cure that. I know Ronnie said when he was talking to me about today, that he wanted me to spend a little bit more time on this part of the operation. So I've riveted them together. These are going to be what I call a flat jaw set of tongs. You see this pair has got a little bit of an arc in them. To finish this up, I'm going to get that joint warm, and really I'm going to hammer everything straight back together. And then I'm going to start working that and loosen it up. I'm going to work it all the way down into a black heat. Okay? Then I'm going to take a heat, and I'm going to find my little quarter-inch piece, and I'm going to put my, if I can throw it out, and I'm going to put my groove in them tongs. I wish I had a long piece, but I don't. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to kind of cure any misalignment issues I have here. Line my jaws up. Now, if I were making this, and I like to call this is kind of my general purpose flat jaw pair of tongs. You know, I used to use these when I was making a lot of hinges. I would use these on 3/16 thick material or 1/8 inch thick or 1/4 inch thick material. If you wanted to have a set of tongs specifically to handle a specific size all the time, if I wanted these to be 1/4 inch, then I'd put me a piece of 1/4 inch flat stock in there, and I'd hammer it down over that 1/2 inch, over that 1/4 inch, and then these tongs would be specifically for 1/4 inch. Now I'm going to get them jaws warm again. I'm going to try to put this little piece of 1/4 inch in there without burning my fingers, and put the grooves in. Now, I forgot what I was going to say. After I get this groove put in there, then I'm going to come over here to the vise, and I'm going to eliminate the left hand, right hand controversy. And the way I'm going to do that, ooh, that worked. Good job. All right, so I'm going to take my 1/4 inch piece, I'm going to nestle it down in my groove, and I'm going to. So there's my other groove, and they're perfectly in line. I'll lay it in my side groove here. That one got a little wonky, but now my groove in both directions lines up.
Can you hold it in front of the camera? Like a little bit closer. A little bit closer. A little bit closer. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right, you see, I'm still working this. Still working that in as smooth. I'll come back, I'll tighten it up a little bit. And I'll work it in smooth some more. Now, I'm going to take one more heat on these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the vise, and I'll do it this way. I'm going to put my jaws in the vise, and I'm going to hold my bottom rein, and I'm going to tap it so that it's in a straight line. Then I'm going to hold my top rein, and I'm going to tap it so that it's in a straight line. And what you're going to wind up with then is a pair of tongs that your reins are in line, and you don't have to worry about whether they're left or right hand tongs, because they're going to fall open equally no matter which way you turn. Is that simple enough for a knife maker to understand, Jeff?
Just alienated half the YouTube.
I know. Bring it on. Yeah. I only say that because Al's never been smart enough to be a knife maker. So.
Wait for the angry comments to start rolling in.
And the viewing numbers go.
Oh no, they'll go up.
Oh, they'll go up.
Yeah. I'm changing the title. Al insults all knife makers.
That's all right. I've moved. Nobody can find me now. No, even Lipsec don't know where I'm at anymore. All right, we ready here, bud? Okay. Again, come over here. Clamp your jaws. I'm going to move this bottom one over in line. I'm going to move this top one over in line. Now everything lines up. And I'm going to put just a little bit.
What was that piece you just put near the boss to close it up?
I put a little spacer between my reins so that I could get them straightened up. And now you see everything's in line. Got a little thickness there where I can grab a piece. I can grab round pieces and work them securely. I can grab square pieces, the same thing. I can grab my material this way, and I can use them on flat pieces. Now, again, things that I could have done better. I got this jaw a little thinner than I like. Okay, as you can see, even though we didn't measure anything, this jaw is just a little bit long, so I can cut that off. I can grind that off and even them up. Our reins wound up, you know, despite not measuring anything, you know, everything's pretty standard. They're about 3/4 to a 1/2 inch long from what will fit down in my little carry-around toolbox. So right there, we've got more than enough material to make our rivet if we need to. Okay. And we'll just work them cool, and they'll be a useful set of tongs. Questions? No questions. So that means I can grab any of you up here to make the second set.
Except the knife makers up there.
Except the knife maker. Don't feed me lines like that. All right, so we're going to let these cool. Now, our next project. Is going to be a set. Let me see. I'm going to get rid of them. Get rid of them. Them are Travis's. We're going to make a pair of scrolling pliers now. I used to use scrolling pliers a great deal in my work. I did some towel bars and some bathroom tissue holders and things that had some organic vine issues in them that I all done with a torch and I done with my scrolling pliers. So I use scrolling pliers all the time. Mine were shorter, as this pair is. Travis has got a pair hanging here, with a much longer handle, and that's fine too. Make your tools to suit whatever work you're going to do. Now, the steps are going to be just exactly the same. Just going to do a little bit different. Okay? I'm going to make the jaw first. I'm just going to round that up and draw that taper on it, make it round. So I'm going to make the jaw. I'm going to make the boss, step 2. And I'm going to make the reins, step 3. Okay? The hole punching will be the same. Riveting will be the same. Alignment will be the same. But what then you wind up with, we're going to use a little bit less material, but what you wind up with, those two tools that are significantly different, but yet useful. For those of you who are inquiring about size, again, because I had a lot of 5/8 laying around, I'm going to use 5/8 inch material. I think for the tongs, I started with 7 inches long. For these short-handled scrolling pliers, I'll do 5 inches. Same material. Now, I have not obviously drawn the reins, or in this case, the handles out. So when we get to that part, we'll go ahead and probably use one of Travis's hammers.
Let me get everybody's attention just a second while Al's prepping this. Next month, we will have open forge. I know some of you came today wanting to get in the fire, but because of the circumstances of us moving everything and our forges are set up in the other building, we're going to do that. We'll have open forge next month, that being February, and then March, George Ezel will be doing a knife demo for us. I know we've got knife guys that are interested in knife making, so we try to have a variety of things going on. So remember, February will be open forge, and then March will be a knife demo by George Ezel.
After Al apologizes for all the knife
I'm going to get that in.
Oh, he is. He just keeps feeding me lines. All right, and I've got this wire here. If you're going to do projects and you think you'll do them again, it's well worth your time to make a set of steps if you're not any smarter than I am, so that you remember how you've done things. Okay, so I've got it in the wire. I've got my starting side. I've got step 1, my jaw. I've got step 2 and 3, and I've got the finished set. Now, rather than one thing that will be different, rather than drawing a flat jaw like we did on our tongs, for these, I'm just going to take, about an inch, and I'm going to draw it out to, 1.5 inches or so with a taper on it. I'm going to round that taper up. In my work, I never needed them any finer than about 3/16 of an inch diameter. What you make yours for is is up to you. If you do have to go a lot of small, very much smaller than this, you might want to maybe use a different quality steel. But mild steel is going to allow you to manipulate any steel you're working on as long as it's hot. All right, Justin, you ready? All right, so when you draw a taper, as you can see, I'm taking a couple of blows on one side, I'm rotating at 90 degrees and working on the other side. I'm keeping track of my square. I'm hammering straight up and down, and this is a real good visual example. I'm hammering straight up and down. When I'm hammering, the material's got nowhere to go but squirt out the front. It's going to follow the path of least resistance. And that's going to be true in everything you do. So, I started out with round. You see I've forged it square. We do this other one the same way. I'm woefully out of shape. So we're going to get that marker again.
Now, you store it with square stock also.
Pardon?
Store it with square stock also, so you still have a little bit of power.
You could. Yeah, you could, David. But, I mean, you're going to go through the same steps. All right, I've got that down to about the size I want. I'm square. Now I'm going to forge on the, I'm going to knock the edge off of those squares. I'm going to go from square to octagon. And then with my next heat, I will round that up a little more. I've got enough heat left in there, I don't have enough arm. Now, since I'm retired, I can't hammer as much as I used to. After you're an octagon, just start working on those corners. You see I'm constantly turning it. And you can take as much time and turn that as smooth as you want. But there is there's our first step. There's what was our jaws and our tongs. There's our first step. And really, really, David asked about square and flat. There's just not a whole lot material-wise difference between half-inch square and 5/8 round. You're gonna have a little bit more mass in your 5/8 round. And also, I need to take another peek on this. Let that other one cool. That worked out easier. Okay, now we're gonna let that get good and warm, and I'm gonna go to steps. So here was step one, my 1, 2, 3 block. Here's step one. There's my jaw. You don't have to worry about the rotation so much on these because we're working with round stock. But I'm going to come over here. I'm going to come to the back of my, call it the jaw, okay? 45 degrees, and that's just so that they fit together a little bit better. Half face blow, take it down to about half material thickness. Okay, so there was step one, step two, and that's what we wind up with. Just like our tongs. Let's go to the start of our boss, which will be where our rivet goes.
Thank you again.
If you come work, let's be fun.
Nah, I'm good.
I may have got that one a little short. I may have got that one a little short.
Can you correct that or just start over?
Yeah, I'll correct it by cutting the low one off, is what I'll do at this stage.
Sometimes you spend more time trying to correct the
Yeah.
voice.
Jeff, the question was, would I correct that? Or would I just, or how would I correct that? And I said, in this case, I would just cut it off. When I get them together, I'll grind them off. Okay, so where we've got our jaw and our boss in both pieces, I'm going to come back over here with step three. And then again, to save my arm a little bit, I'm going to draw one of these out on Travis's hammer. I'll just one more to find it.
He said one of the hammers was giving him trouble. Which hammer you gonna use?
To do what?
Which hammer?
Oh, probably the little one there will be fine.
The white one.
Yeah, the white one will be fine.
He said.
So, Harold, I'm gonna need you to move. Yeah, I need another piece. Yeah, because I had to do stuff first. All right, so 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna come over here. Yeah. Yeah, I'll need several heats on that boss. Now, when I come over to alright, now, when I come to the power hammer, it'll get a little bit noisy, so I'll explain what we're going to do here. All I'm going to do is use the power hammer to draw these handles out, to draw these reins out. As we talked about with the tongs, the power hammer's hammering straight up and down. I'm pulling my metal through it and kind of, I've always described it as pushing a wave of material out in front of you. You know, some people tell you to feed it, I've always drawn it. Whatever works for you, okay? But the point I wanted to make is that hammer is hammering straight up and down. Still moving the metal. When you hammer, practice hammering straight up and down, because you're just wasting energy if you're hammering, trying to push stuff out like that. All of your momentum straight up and down. said on the first set, you start with the same mass, and you do the same steps, and you're going to wind up pretty well with the same piece. Okay? I've left these a little heavy. I could take them down more, or like I said, if this was the only material you had, make your rivet out of a piece of these, and then cut the other set to match. All right, we're gonna get these warm. We're gonna put our rivet hole in them, just like we did the last time. And Jeff, if you don't mind, I will ask you to hold these for me while I do that.
I was gonna ask how hot the handle is.
Well, I'll let you use tongs.
Don't make me be honest.
All right, from here on out, it's pretty well the same thing. We're going to punch the holes just like we did in your...
I'm sorry. Shake.
Turn around the other way. Good to you, know you're fine. Okay, turn over. No, yeah, that's fine. Okay, and there's our hole. We'll make that a little bigger. Maybe go through the other side. All right. Okay. Got it. Okay, we're gonna just leave that here. Second verse, same as the first. Turn it over, Jeff. There we go. I always like to do this side so that I can have that flat surface. Draw it down now.
Yeah. Also, I'm not really marking anything. Everything's done by eye, more or less.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter.
Hey!
That's where we put in the YouTube disclaimer: all stunts are performed by professionals on a closed set.
Yeah, don't do this
Do
at
not
home.
attempt this at home.
I would
Do
not
not send us
recommend
videos
not
of
to
your
do it.
fails.
Yeah.
We will not work with it.
Okay. So, let Al rest just a second, catch his breath, and then we'll let them cool, and we'll rivet them off, we'll rivet them together, and we'll shortly be done.
Now it goes back to you punching the hose in. You put it in the center. When you get through, you go back and grind what you want to make everything level.
I can, or you can hammer everything right. As long as you do all your adjusting hot and make sure they're loose, you can do a whole lot with on the hammer. Now, yeah, I will grind wherever that pair of tongs is. I'll grind that long jaw. Okay, temperature. This piece of metal I know is dead cold. This piece of metal, although other than not being quite as shiny, is still that dark gray. This piece of metal can still be 1,000 degrees. Okay, so unless you know something is absolutely dead cold, either wait for it to cool off, sit down, have a drink, relax, you know.
Always touches that if it's
When you, another thing that I tell, you know, everybody, is if you pick up a piece of metal, or if you're gonna pick up a piece of metal, and you don't know whether it's hot or not, reach for it with the back of your hand. That way you can feel the heat coming up off of it, but there is no way you can grab it. Okay, and I can still feel some heat off there, so I know I'm not going to grab it. I'll just pull it off. Because, you know, when I was a hobbyist and I grabbed something hot and I got some blisters, well, it wasn't a big thing. But when I was forging every day for a living, if I wound up with a handful of blisters, then I couldn't forge for several days. So I tried to avoid that at all costs. All right, again, if you have made both pieces exactly the same, they're going to fit together. They're going to fit together. I'm going to take one heat on this one and kind of work on that cloth just a little bit. I kind of blew it out a little bit when I punched a hole in it. Pardon? That's just a piece of 1/4 inch round stuff. And that's pretty well what I use for all my tongs. I never worked on, you know, stuff that was real big, so I didn't need anything.
it goes back to mild steel.
Yeah, it goes back to mild steel. Because even when you buy factory made rivets, man, I mean, factory made rivets are dead soft. Yeah, that's better. That's better. We talked about punching holes a little while ago. If you are a machinist and you're drilling out a hole, you're going to lose enough material that's the same diameter of your drill, the thickness of your piece. When you're punching out a hole, you just lose a little bitty piece of your material.
Is there any pros or cons against drilling or punching?
Strength-wise, I don't think so, Jeff. When I was doing it all the time, I could punch a hole, I think, faster than I could put a drill in the drill press and drill it. But that's the difference in material loss.
I think so. The material loss punching it, you don't lose any. Drilling, you lose a little bit.
Yeah, basic. Okay, so we're going to take these pieces just like the others. You know, if you buy what? There we go. Like that. If you buy rivets, of course, you know, one side will have a head on it.
That's for store-bought rivets compared to that. Any difference? You said one more softer.
Yeah, I think actual rivet materials. I don't know what the chemical composition is, but they're really soft. All right, so there's our tongs, or there's our scrolling pliers forged out. To get them hot, I'm gonna fit them together. I'm gonna go through basically the same adjustment procedure I went with on the tongs.
You got two separate tongues over there?
Yeah, I've got one, and Dustin's got another one. When we get these hot, I'm going to kind of hammer everything in the right configuration. I'm going to work them as they cool off.
When you
And they'll loosen off.
when you're working them, I put them in water, no, or just let them air cool.
I've done it both ways.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. A lot of I think like,
One speed process up, one down.
yeah. I think these were probably dipped in WD-40 when they were still a little bit warm. Yeah, burning them up. Just for spot. The world is watching, Dustin.
Now the pressure's on.
My world, it's 8 people.
Okay, so. These are any hands. Put a little bit more heat in them to finish adjusting them. We talked about gloves a little while ago. You know, a lot of people use leather gloves. For a long time I used them big, fat, fuzzy cotton gloves. And then when Kevlar gloves become available and affordable, that's what I use.
So where do you pick up the gloves at?
When I was working all the time, I was buying them a dozen at a time, either from, I always get the name wrong, MSC, or,
I've been to Mike's merchandise and they have them sometimes.
oh yeah, I just, you know, I wanted a reliable place, so I either bought, you know, like I said, I bought them a dozen at a time. Sometimes it was from MSC, but oddly enough, it's a paper box company called Uline that sells a lot of safety equipment, safety stuff like that. I'll get more to get in.
What's the temperature? 300 degrees somewhere?
No, All right, here's temperature. I can just barely, and you all can see, I don't know if the camera can pick it up or not. You know, that's a real dull red. That's still 1,000+ degrees. You see color at about 1,000, anywhere from 1,000 to 1,100 degrees is where you start seeing color. Again, you burn yourself at 135 degrees. Here. Gravity work for me. Just about like that. Travis, you got a, can I use this piece of 1/4 inch round down in here?
Yeah.
You'll never know, John.
He'll never know. I'm just gonna heat that up and,
Sounded a whole lot like Ronnie.
do what?
That sounded a whole lot like
It did sound
Ronnie.
like Ronnie, didn't it? Well, you know, if the Grand Poobah told me it was all right, then we'll be all right.
Now, benzoate is mild still, does not affect that whatsoever.
Not at that kind of travel. And if it did, and I break them in half, I've lost $1 worth of material. Now, yeah, you've got some sweat equity built into it.
Yeah, I know, but some people don't know about the difference of mild steel and the rest.
Right.
Mild steel don't matter.
All right, so there's, where'd the sub-tongs go? All right, so we started out with the same size of material. We went through the same steps, but we've wound up with 2 different tools, yet both are very usable and very useful. And what I'm going to do, I've got a little piece of 1/4 inch round in there that I'll, as you can see, your reins and your jaws are in line, so left and right, the left and right question is not relevant. Now, if I was doing like an organic, viney end on, say, a towel bar or a toilet tissue holder or a towel ring or even a hook, I went just like I did with my reins. I drew my material square and then round, or square, an octagon, and then round, because you see, very few vines with sharp edges on it. Oh, I could use that too, see? Dustin says, why don't you use the tongs that you just made to hold that piece?
Just thinking out loud. You thought it might break, I don't know.
So I'll pick up this pair of tongs that I just made. I'm going to grab this piece of 1/4 inch with them. A little longer heat.
He stings you with it, isn't it?
Thought we were friends.
So, and if I want to use my scrolling tongs, then put a little viney element on here. Should have done that a little longer. And depending on the heat and what you want to do, you can use your scrolling tongs to do any kind of decorative little thing that you want to with it. Or to just grab a piece and straighten it out. Because they're shorter, you've got a little bit more torque on them than you would on a pair of tongs. And I know you're all smart enough, but I'll go over this one more time. Whether you're making a set of scrolling pliers or a set of tongs, there's 3 steps. The jaws are a little 1, 2, 3 block here. Step 1's your jaw, no matter what that jaw looks like. Whether you're flat jaws or scrolling tongs, or if you're making a set of tongs to do railroad spikes or anything. You start with your jaw, you go to your boss, you go to your ring. 3 steps.
All right, now, we made a flat set of tongs.
Yes.
So what if we wanted to make a little curvature to hold the blade? I would just get them hot and just shape them to the curve?
Well, you talking about a round or a square configuration?
You got one here.
Okay, all right. Here.
Because
All right, here's one here.
onto a piece of steel.
Yeah, we've got 3 good examples here. Just like that. This is a pair of tongs to hold a piece of like 1.25 inch, about 1 inch wide, 1/4 inch thick, maybe 3/8 thick long. This pair of tongs, you can have the material extending out here. The only difference in these and the flat jaw ones that I made was that this jaw is spread out wider, and then you form it around whatever size material you want to.
Take a piece of flat stock and shape it.
Yes, take you a piece of flat stock and grab it. Thank you, Ronnie. And that's the way those will hold the piece. All right, now, if you want to make jaws, put them back on Travis's rack. If you want to make jaws to hold a square piece, then really you don't have to spread your jaws out too much, but you could use your little V tool in a V block and just hammer it down in there.
Well, let's make them a little bit wider, then put your block in
Yeah,
right side
and it
shape
doesn't
fit.
have to be a whole lot wider for tongs like this.
Shape it to fit.
Okay, these tongs will hold either square or round stock. Okay, if you want to make a pair of tongs, for instance, a pair of tongs that I used a good bit this morning show them. Oh, here it is. Okay. For instance, this is the pair of tongs that I used to hold either 1/2 or 5/8 inch square or round stock. The jaws were just made a little wider, and then that V swedged down in and they formed around them. Something that we did not talk about, but Travis and I did a class this time. Now, if you looked at it like this, okay, that's a set of jaws to hold a piece of round stock, approximately 7/8 to 1 inch diameter. Okay, same thing. I just spread the jaws a little bit wider before I formed them. In the case of these, we cut one rein off and stick it down into a block of wood, and you roll your other end up to act as a counterbalance, and you have a candle holder. Okay, Travis and I have done a class or two, and I've done it at Burritt, where we make a little rushlight candle holder, and it's a pair of tongs is all it is. Rather to hold a piece of straw up in here. In that case, this arm comes down and bends to a 90 degrees, and we just put a flat pan on it. So you can hold a piece of pine straw or something in here to use as a candle, or you can have a candle stub here. This acts as your counterbalance to hold it. Gravity holds it tight. That's a set of tongs to hold something round, is all it is. And
how much longer is the scrolled side?
oh boy, Danya, I don't know.
4 or 5 inches long.
It's longer than what we made. This one was cut off. I would say that this part may have been drawn out to about 18 inches or so. But really, it's like in a configuration like this, and somebody that's good in engineering or physics could explain it a lot better than I am. When you roll this up, you've got more weight right here. You can leave it long too and hanging down and do the same thing. It's just a counterbalance is all it is. Okay. Any other questions? Well, then once again, I'll say thank you. That's not a message. That's a message from the mothership. I'll have to answer. Next month, we're going to have open forge. I was going to say I would be here to help, but I won't be. I've got another obligation next time. But we've got some material. Bring your material. Bring your hammer. Bring your punches, and Travis or a lot of these guys can walk you through making a pair of tongs. As I always say before, if it's not easy, I can't tell you about it. So you can all do this.
You can also follow along with the video on YouTube.
Yes, you can. If you've really got the patience, you can watch the YouTube video again, or if you just need something to help you go to sleep one night, put the YouTube video on and watch that.
Thanks, Al.
All right, thank you all.
Even going back to the YouTube video, if you miss a step,
Yes.
go back and see
Yes.
it, then you go back to the other process.
Jeff made a very good point. On the YouTube, you can back it up. You can watch a step over and over again. And it's I always caution people about YouTube because there's people out there that put stuff on there that will hurt you. Okay? Be careful.
Common sense.
Common sense. I many times will refer, especially a younger, inexperienced smith, to a computer site called iForge Iron. It's an open forum. Anybody can post on it. One of the advantages of that site is there's enough moderators that have been smiths a long time. If somebody puts something that's blatantly stupid and is going to hurt people, they get slapped down pretty quick.
What'd you say it was called?
It's called Forage Iron. And you can find almost any topic you want to look at on there.
How do you find this one on YouTube?
All you have to do is search Athens Forage Guild under YouTube. It'll be the first one that pops up. It's a picture of the ring that the guys made, and there will be all the episodes that we've ever live streamed on there.
Again, Al, we appreciate it. Like I said, I can always depend on Al. He always does a good job of verbally and also with his demonstration of explaining what he's doing. We appreciate you. We're gonna have our Iron in the Hat now. Those of you that haven't bought tickets that want to, you might get you some there. Next month, we mentioned we would have open Forage. We're planning on meeting up at the other shop because we've got some foraging stations set up there that we won't be as crowded as we are here. We got 3 or 4 set up there right now.
There's 3 set up.
3
now.
set up right now. So if you want to get in the fire and do a little bit, please come prepared to do that.
I'll have these ready for Iron in the Hat in just a moment.
Anybody else got anything?